Welcome to Quilting the Kaye Way. Today we're going to take a look at a star pattern, an 8-pointed star. And yes, it does have points, so this is probably more for the people who enjoy matching points. Although with my tips, maybe the pointless people could do it too. Stay tuned. Welcome back. I call this quilt Blazing Stars because the stars just look to me like they really blaze. So an apt title, but it's really so easy to do. What we need to do is get two contrasting fabrics for the star and then a background that either coordinates or is darker than, or if your star is real dark, a lighter background. So I've chosen the one I'm working on here. I have two shades of green, a very dark, a very light green, and I'm going to cut two strips, and they're 2-inch wide of each. Sew one of each strip together, and not both strips. That seems to be the problem. Most people can't wait to get started, and they take the two strips they have and make one set and make another set. Don't do that. You only want to sew one strip of each together. And incidentally, this is one of the favorite quilts that I teach in my teacher certification class. So let's take a look at how easy it is. We have two strips sewn together and our seam allowance is pressed toward the darker fabric. Now I'm going to take the Starmaker 8, which was designed for perfect 8-pointed stars. It does a lot more than that, but that's what it was designed for. I'm going to lay it on the strip here, the dark strip, and I've already cut this first piece. And when I do that, that is the perfect angle for any 8-pointed star. It doesn't matter if you're working with a miniature, then your strips would be much narrower, or a wider or a bigger star, then your strips would be wider than this. But in this case, I've used 2-inch strips. So I've made my first cut. Now I have to have some way of measuring over on the strip to keep cutting pieces. So on my ruler, I have a 2-inch line marked. Why 2 inches? Because each of these strips were 2 inches. If they had been 3 inches, how wide do you think we'd mark? 3 inches. Okay, I've put a piece of static sticker on my ruler. That's a piece of tape and it comes in the pattern. And you put it on your ruler and it doesn't leave any residue. You can take it off and put it on. And this little piece here is a lifetime supply. If it doesn't stick on your ruler, what you need to do is wash it with soap and water. It gets the oil from your fingers on it and then it won't stick. So you'll use it forever unless you lose it like I do. Okay, I've got my 2-inch wide. Now, a lot of people think it would be so easy to just continue cutting with the ruler on this edge. Well, if you do, you'll probably be sorry because the angle of your star will change and then it won't go together. What we need to do is use the ruler for distance and the Starmaker 8 for the angle. What we need is along the strip and then we cut here. The ruler we just use for distance. And we have a piece that looks like this. And let's just go ahead and cut another one. Once I have the static sticker on there, it's pretty easy. See now, let me just show you what happens if you just use the ruler. I could put it on there a little bit like this. It's just a little bit off, but I might not notice it. But if I put the Starmaker 8 against it, look what happens down here. That needs to be on the whole strip to keep that angle accurate. And remove the ruler and cut. Now, in a few minutes, we'll sew these together, but let me take a look at the background. The background of the star, right here, the black, That can be done in two different ways, and I've included techniques for both in the pattern. It can be done the traditional way, where these are one piece, or I'm going to show you a super easy way to do it today, so that, because that's the part that keeps a lot of people from doing stars. So I'm going to cut 4 pieces. These are squares of the background fabric, and they are 5.5 inches. So I need 4 pieces that are 5.5, and I need 2 pieces that are 6 inches square. And I'm going to, let's first cut this one. We're going to cut it from corner to corner. Be very careful here. This is the 6-inch piece. Corner to corner, and the other way, corner to corner. So we're going to get 4 triangles out of this piece. Okay, I'm just going to put those here so that we'll have them when we go to the sewing machine. Now the 5.5-inch square, we're just going to cut diagonally once. And let's see here. Most rulers have a line, a 45-degree line, so they can do this, or you can use the Starmaker 8. So the smaller square, the 5.5, we've just cut once diagonally, and there are 4 of those. The 6-inch one we cut twice into an X, and then we have these pieces. Let's go over to the sewing machine now and see how easy this is to sew. Now remember the strips that I told you to just not sew together, the light and the dark? Well, we're going to use them now. And I have this one started. We cut 8 pieces from the strip that look like this. We're going to take 4 of them, and with the dark diamond up, we're going to sew them to the dark strip, one right after the other. You can see I've already done that. The pieces should be touching, or you know what happens if they don't touch? You'll soon learn you have to work twice as hard. Make them touch but not overlap. So when on the dark strip, the dark diamond goes at the top. The light strip, the light diamond goes at the top. And let's just sew a few more on here. As I said before, we want them touching but not overlapping. Now here's another check to make sure that you cut things accurately. You see the edges of these pieces that we're sewing on? They should line up perfectly with this edge. If they're too narrow or too wide, then you need to go back and recut them. And so we sew 4 with the light diamond up on the light strip and 4 on the dark strip. Now it's time to press these. And we're going to press toward the new strip because there are no seam lines there. We want to reduce the bulk as much as possible when we sew things. So here we have a seam. If we were to press the seam in this direction, we'd have 4 layers of fabric in the seam allowance. Do it the other way. It makes it much easier. So in order to press the seam allowance toward the new strip, I'm going to lay the new strip down on my on my pressing mat, press it exactly the way it is, and let the iron do the work. Don't handle the fabric any more than necessary. Just across the strip once with a grain line. And let's do that with the dark strip. Again, it doesn't matter at this point which is dark and which is light. You want to press toward the new strip. Again, press it as you sewed it. And just once across with the grain line of the fabric. Here we go. And you'll see that our seam allowances are pressed toward the new strip. Now it's time to cut these pieces. And let's just line them up here. how are we going to cut them? Well, we're going to use the Starmaker 8 again, and we're going to line it up with the new strip, always the new strip, and with the cut edge we've already cut. And this part's already been cut. Let's come down to this one. See right here where they join together? Well, let's move this over a little bit. Here we go. Line it up with the new strip, with the cut edge. This is where I said if it's apart, see these aren't touching, so you're going to have to make 2 cuts. You have to work twice as hard. So you'll soon learn that you want to touch them. So here we have this piece. Now I have to come down and make that second cut, working twice as hard. We don't want that. And then what we get from this piece are these pieces for our star, and from the dark strip, we get these pieces for our star. Now it's time to put our star together. Okay. And we have 8 pieces, and so we'll just alternate. And can you see the star just begin to pop out? And it all happens automatically. I mean, all you have to do is cut it the way I did. You don't have to play with the fabric or do anything else. Let's see, we need one more of these. And one of this. And that's how our star goes together. Now, the traditional way of piecing this star is to put the star together and then piece in the triangles and squares to square it up. But I found that some of my students, especially those who think of themselves as pointless, they can do this star, but they have trouble with the piecing in the corners. So what I've done there is we cut remember when we cut these pieces? We have some that were from a large strip and cut. We're going to put those right here. Let's see here. Sometimes it takes a little finagling to get them in the right place. What we need is this. Oh, just here we go, right like this, and like this. And now when we sew them together, we'll have a straight seam. So let me fix my 4 corners that way, because I find that you know, if you try and skip some of these steps, that you wind up with things not fitting. So we have a square in each corner. No, it's got to fit better than that. So here we go, there. It takes a little bit of finagling, like I said, especially if you've never done it before, to get these pieces where they belong. There we go. Those are our 4 corners. Now remember the smaller, or actually the larger square that we cut into an X. These pieces are going to fit in this way and this way. And we'll lay them all out, and then we'll sew them together and see what happens. See that? You can tell that's not right. If we turn it around this way, we get there we go. We want that straight edge on the outside. And no matter how many of these I make, it still takes me a few minutes to get them in place right. And we have 2 more, and they go up there. And that would be this piece and this piece. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is to sew these into units. And the unit would be the star point with the 2 pieces on. And I'm going to start with the biggest one first. Now, these pieces are bigger than you need to be. If you've been following my shows, you know that I make allowances for different seam lines or seam allowances and for different width strips. But what we want to do is do what I call a needle match right here, where these two pieces of fabric overlap. They need to match. Don't worry about this out here. Let that just go where it wants to go. But right here, that has to be the needle width at 1/4 of an inch. So I just put them together, put my needle down, and slide this under, up against the needle and the edge of the 1/4 inch. And if it doesn't match exactly, move it. Because that's what gives you that nice straight line. Okay, so this piece is here, and let's sew this piece. Well, let's finish this corner right here first. Again, it's the piece up here that needs to match. And we do the needle match, so it'll line up perfectly. Okay, and here we have that piece. All right, now when we press, we're going to press toward the corner piece. So let's press this piece so that we can put on the other side. See how it lines up with a straight line? That's what the needle match does. Okay, and we'll press this one too. I found you don't want to get these out of position too much, because dire things can happen and you have to sort of go back and restart. Okay, so that piece is there. Let's put this piece on now to finish this unit. And again, this is where it needs to match. Don't worry about down here. So that would be a needle match again. Right at 1/4 of an inch. The interesting thing with this technique on a needle match, once people see what it is supposed to accomplish, I find that they automatically line their pieces up right and they don't have to use the needle. But just the idea of giving them that technique helps them to do that. Okay, and here we have a piece, and let's press that. Put it back into position, and we'll finish up this piece by adding this, matching it here, and let the other end just go. Well, that didn't quite match at a needle. Here, I just said that you don't usually have to do that after you learn it. There we go. Okay, now let's go ahead and sew these two together. And we have things that need to match here. So that's really critical. We have, of course, the point here. You can just hold that together. This is up to you whether you want to pin or not. I can show you how to pin it so it'll always be accurate. I find I finger pin. I use my fingers and hold them exactly together. So first of all, let me show you how we'll pin it. If you are more comfortable pinning to match your seams, we want the pin to go in at 1/4 of an inch right on the seam line on the top and bottom. Okay, that's how that would be. And here we have another seam that needs to match. Okay, right in the seam. You'll find as we go along that the pinning techniques that I give you, you are always pinning along the grain line of the fabric. And that's really important because some of our edges are biased when we're working with stars. And how do we know what is the straight of grain of the fabric? It's the seam line. The seam line will be on the straight of grain. Okay, we'll start right here in the center. We don't want to sew over pins, so you get as close to the pin as you can before you take it out. Now, I know some of you sew over pins. You tell me you do. And you know what? From what I hear, that can really throw the mechanics of your sewing machine off. So try to get in the habit of not sewing over pins. I know we're all creatures of habit, and we do it. Let's take a look. Are they going to match? Here we go with our seams. See right here? There, and let's just press, and we have one unit of our star together. And this center seam I like to press open, but I don't like to press from the wrong side. So the easiest way I found to do it is first press it to one side, either side, and then go back. And since it's pressed and you know it, there aren't any creases, now you can come in here and just go right down the center of the seam. And again, as I've told you many, many times, no steam. Steam stretches your fabric. Okay, so we have our seam allowance pressed open. Can you see where we're going with our piece? Let's just sew another unit together. And again, we start out with the corner, the big piece. Needle match to here.